Now that we've had our hands on Apple's M1 MacBook Air and MacBook Pro for over 2 months, I figured I'd revisit the topic of which one of these M1 Macs you should buy, except this time there's a twist. What if you should actually hold off and wait for the future redesigned Apple Silicon MacBooks instead? Because yes, we are expecting some new fully redesigned models in the near future, and I'm going to be talking about all of those leaks and rumors and what to expect from them. And believe it or not, some people will actually be much better off buying an M1 Mac right now instead of waiting. But before I get into all of that, I want to talk about the differences between the Air and the Pro after 2 full months. First, let me quickly cover the main hardware differences that actually matter. The MacBook Air is completely fanless, while the Pro does have one fan. The Pro comes with an 8-core GPU at the base price instead of 7 with the Air. The Pro also gets a larger 58.2 watt-hour battery compared to 49.9 on the Air. And finally, the MacBook Air starts at $999 compared to $1,299 for the Pro. Those are the major hardware differences between the two, so at first glance, it seems like the Air is a much better value, and after 2 months, I've gotta admit that it definitely is. But there are some reasons that people should be buying the MacBook Pro instead, and I'll explain in just a second. On the exterior, the main difference is the shape, with the Air being more of a wedge shape instead of a flat slate shape on the Pro. Because of that difference, the Air is a bit more comfortable for typing since your palm doesn't dig into the edge of the MacBook like on the Pro. By far, the biggest difference is the fact that the Air gets the traditional function keys, while the Pro gets the touch bar that many people don't like. Now, I personally prefer the function keys because I never really got much use out of the touch bar. In most apps, it's easier and faster to just use keyboard shortcuts, and for adjusting brightness and audio settings, the function keys are hands down the better option. What makes this even more interesting are some very recent leaks and rumors that point to Apple finally ditching the touch bar and going back to function keys on the future MacBook Pros, and I'm gonna get into the rest of those interesting leaks in just a minute. Now, getting back to the Air versus Pro, the other major difference is the battery life. Even though the physical battery itself is only around 16% larger on the MacBook Pro, somehow the battery life is much better. Linus Tech Tips tested the video playback and they found that the Pro's battery lasted over 20 hours, which is incredible, and it lasted about 7 hours longer than the MacBook Air. That's over 50% better battery life with a battery that's only 16% larger. And I'd say that this is by far the biggest factor when you're trying to decide between these two. Now, I'm not trying to say that the battery life on the MacBook Air is bad. It's better than basically every Windows laptop ever, but the Pro is just on a whole nother level. So if battery life is incredibly important to you, then paying an extra $300 is definitely worth it. But if you don't really go out much and you don't mind plugging it in a little bit more often, then the Air is definitely fine. Now, in terms of performance, the Air is more than enough for most people, even those who need it for productivity work like general photo and video editing. In our testing, the Air held up extremely well in terms of everything from Logic Pro music production, Xcode programming, Final Cut video editing, and Lightroom Classic photo editing. And those are all tasks that the Intel MacBook Airs have never been good at. Now, because of the M1 chip, you can finally do those tasks with excellent performance. But the main advantage is that it's completely fanless, so you never have to worry about the fan kicking on ever again. With the previous MacBook Air, the fan would turn on at the weirdest times, like when simply browsing the web, or even worse, while on a Zoom call or watching a movie, which can get extremely annoying since you can't hear it that well. With the M1, no fan means absolutely zero noise. And even while doing high performance work, it doesn't get nearly as hot as the previous Intel MacBooks would get. No fans also means no dust clogging the internals of your MacBook, which leads to blocked airflow and overheating after just a couple of years of use. Now, because of all of that, it might seem like the added fan on the Pro model isn't so great after all. But after 2 months of use, we've noticed that we barely even hear the fan on the Pro at all. We use the fan and temp tracking app named TG Pro, and while doing basic tasks like web browsing, watching videos, or other things like that, the fan on the Pro is almost always completely turned off, not running at all. And when doing light productivity work, the fan turns on, but it stays at around idle speed, and at those speeds, you can't hear it unless you literally put your ear to the back of the MacBook Pro, and that's just incredible. So because of that, we decided to run the most intensive heavy workloads on both of these MacBooks to see if the fan actually made a real-world difference. We exported 500 raw 42 megapixel photos in Lightroom Classic, which is just about the heaviest workload you can put on the CPU and the RAM, and we were honestly expecting a much bigger difference. The Pro was only 3.5 minutes faster than the fanless Air. We then switched over to the graphics side and exported an 8K Red Raw clip in Final Cut Pro, which basically maxes out the graphics and uses a ton of CPU power, and the Pro was only 2.5 minutes faster. So to be completely honest, that big of a difference is not worth the extra $300 for the Pro, especially since the Air doesn't even have a fan. We then tested out gaming, and here there was actually a difference, with the Pro getting around 11% higher frames per second, but that's only because the Pro comes with an 8-core GPU compared to 7 on the Air. We later tested the top 10 most popular games on Twitch with the M1 MacBook Pro, and we noticed that after most of the games, the fan speed was barely above idle, which was really impressive considering that most other laptops get very loud while gaming. But I've got to say that if you're crazy about gaming, the future M1X MacBooks are going to be much better, as we're expecting a 16-core GPU, which is going to handle many games extremely well. So if you're all about gaming, you might want to wait and hold off for just a little bit longer. But getting back to the Air versus Pro, I've got to say that if you're trying to get the best performance for the buck, you should probably just get the Air and save that $300. And if you really want to upgrade something, I'd either upgrade the storage or go for 16 gigs of RAM, which can help for photo editing and heavy multitasking. So if I had to close the M1 MacBook Air versus Pro topic, I'd honestly have to say that almost everybody should just buy the Air for the better value. And this finally brings us to some more leaks to solidify our conclusion on not going for the M1 MacBook Pro. Just a few days ago, both Ming-Chi Kuo and Mark Gurman released reports claiming that 2 redesigned MacBook Pro models are coming later this year, with Kuo pointing to a summer release date. Now, I personally think it makes sense for Apple to announce these at this year's WWDC conference, since that's when they initially announced the Apple Silicon transition last year, but I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. In terms of the redesign changes, Kuo is expecting both 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro models with mini LED displays, a new flat edge design like we currently have on the iPhone 12 and the iPad Pro, the return of the MagSafe charging connector, more types of ports, and of course, the removal of the touch bar. So if you're looking at the current 13-inch MacBook Pro, you should definitely consider waiting just a few more months for these new models, because Apple is likely gonna stick with this new redesign for many years. And these new Pros will also come with a more powerful M1X chip. However, I'm almost 100% sure that the 14-inch MacBook Pro is gonna start at either $1,800 or $2,000. So if there's no way you're willing to pay that much for a laptop, then you should not wait for them, and you might as well just get an M1 model right now. Now, on top of those leaks for the Pro models, we also have multiple sources confirming that the next MacBook Air is only gonna come out in 2022. And if Apple releases it in the fall like they did with the M1 model, that basically means that there won't be an updated MacBook Air for almost 2 more years. And it's rumored to get the new mini LED display, the full redesign, and it's likely to come with a new 3nm chip. but to be honest, it doesn't make sense to wait that long before buying a new MacBook, especially if you're interested right now. So here's the final rundown. If the M1 Macs perform well enough for your needs, and you don't want to wait a few months to spend at least $1,800 on a new 14-inch MacBook Pro, then we think that based on all of our testing, most people should probably just buy the M1 MacBook Air for $999 right now, especially since the redesigned model is not coming until 2022. So hopefully this video helped you make a decision, and if it did, you can find the best deals on these MacBooks down in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click the circle above to subscribe, and definitely check out one of those two videos right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.